Welcome to the English Wine Project. Today we're going to do a very brief history of English wine. And we're going to start here with Hambledon. As the oldest commercial vineyard in the UK, we're going to have a glass of Hambledon. It's very rich, it's nice and savoury, it's got a warm apple note to it. It's very, very generous in the glass. And that's not what anyone would expect when they're thinking of English wine. But how do we get here? And to know that, we've got to go back. And luckily for me, as a Roman enthusiast, we get to start with the Romans. The climate was warmer, historically, and the Romans are very interested in their wines, and where the Roman Empire went, vines went. Now, quite traditionally, this would have been drunk by the poorer classes as something called posca, which would have been a wine, vinegar, water, and spices mix, something like a bitter mulled wine. They did have their more classic wines, but these were really reserved for the slopes of Mount Etna and the slopes of Mount Vesuvius. Now, after the Romans left, vineyards didn't disappear completely. During the medieval period, many vineyards were maintained by the churches. Sacramental wine was always came useful. But the English wine never became a large industry, and it took a downturn with two major events. Firstly was the dissolution of the monasteries. Henry VIII's power grab in the early 1500s led to stripping of the monasteries of lots of their vineyards and the destruction of these. Secondarily, Europe descended into the Little Ice Age, a period of time spreading from 1400s to the 1800s, at which times the Thames froze over year on year. These temperatures are not conducive to the growing of vines. So to say that winemaking in the UK started in the 20th century would be a bit of a fallacy, but the real beginning of modern English wine was in 1952. Major General Sir Guy Salisbury-Jones returned from France having fought in World War II and got to know Port Roger, and was encouraged to plant vines in the south of England. He did so at his Hambledon house, and that vineyard location remains today. The first plantings in Hambledon were the first commercial vineyard in the UK. These did descend into disrepair, and in the early 2000s, Hambledon found itself a new owner, and Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, and Pinot Meunier were planted in those locations. And today, Hambledon produces wines like this one. It's rich, it's fruity, it's savoury, it's got a hint of pepper, it's very, very interesting. And it owes a lot of its birthright to the terroir and its predecessors. So in the decades after Hambledon was planted in 1952, other vineyards moved in. In 1972, Bonny Estate was founded in Sussex. In 1974, Peter Hall planted Breaky Bottom, which has gone to form a cult status, and unfortunately we've recently lost him. He planted Sèvres Blanc and Muller Thurgau. At this stage, growers were experimenting with all kinds of vines, but particularly focused on German varietals. Now, Germany is not the same as England, and we know this, but at the time it seemed that the northern German varietals would suit our colder climate. However, the comparison of our climate to Germany is that Germany has hot summers and freezing cold winters, whereas we have warm summers and warm, wet winters, and mould and rot becomes a real issue. The one surviving grape type that has really become England's own is Bacchus, and Bacchus has the tasting notes of a nice spring summer day in the UK. It's elderflower and it's grass. It's almost the England version of a Sauvignon Blanc. It's absolutely beautiful. Bacchus still leads the way in English still wine, and there are a few sparkling variations of it. And in the 80s, the revolution, the terroir realisation. Geologically, southern England is on the same seam of chalk as Champagne, so maybe we shouldn't be growing like Germany. Maybe we should be growing like Champagne. Maybe we should be focusing on those primary three varietals, Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, and Pinot Meunier. And in 1988, with an American invasion, this was realised. In 1988, the Moss family came and they took the world by storm. Nyetimber in Sussex. It focused on Chardonnay, Pinot Meunier and Pinot Noir. Their first wine, the 1992 Blanc de Blanc, showed enormous promise, and their 1993 Classic Cuvée went on to win the world's major sparkling wine trophies at the International Wine and Spirit Competition. England was on the map, and I think it's time to thank Nyetimber, so let's get some in the glass. Now, Nyetimber really demonstrates that chalky character of English wines that's made it so potent. It's a beautiful glass of wine. It's chalk, it's acidity, it's lemon, it's apple. It begs you to have more. But it wasn't just Nyetimber. After Nyetimber's success, more serious production began to emerge. Ridgeview was founded in Sussex in 1995, focusing exclusively on traditional method sparkling wine. Chapeldown grew rapidly in Kent and became the largest producer of sparkling wine in England. And in 2004, vines were planted at Gusbourne, which would go on to produce some of the most widely acclaimed English sparkling wines. By the early 2000s, English sparkling wine was getting an international reputation. In 2010, legendary wine writer Steven Spurrier would set up the Judgment of London to match his 1976 the Judgment of Paris. In the Judgment of London, sparkling wines from Nyetimber and Ridgeview would go up against the world's best in a blind tasting and come out on top. A few years later, Spurrier would go one further. He would plant a vineyard in Dorset titled Bride Valley. Their Blanc de Blanc in 2018 won international awards and is one of the most respected sparkling producers in the UK. Today, the English wine industry is booming. There are over 1,100 vineyards and 230 vineyards in the UK. Sparkling wine still leads the way, but increasingly winemakers are making impressive Chardonnays and Pinot Noirs. Danbury Ridge has hailed this new era of red English wine. Their Pinot Noir, thanks to extremely warm temperatures, is actually able to ripen to a good extent, and we're starting to see English red wines that will match their French counterpart. Climate change has played a huge role in the development of English wine. With temperatures increasing, and notably over the last 20 years, the average temperature increasing, we're now seeing conditions where grapes can ripen properly. We're at the temperature currently that champagne was in the 1970s in the UK, and this is the perfect growing conditions for these sparkling wines. Along with the terroir, we are making world-class sparkling wine. Early English wines would have been good for England, and now they're good for the world. But the next era is where the question comes. I'm extremely excited for this period of wine. These wines are absolutely delicious, and increasingly I'm turning my friends to them, my family to them. So we've gone from Roman vineyards to medieval monasteries to the near disappearance of English vineyards, to the rebirth at Hambledon, to the revolution at Nyetimber, and the explosion through the rest of England. This is such an exciting time for English wine, and I hope you'll join me with it. What are you still doing? If you like English wine, and you want to know more about English wine, and you want more tasting notes on English wine, like and subscribe. It'll all be here.